What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, your weekly look what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan. I am here with my co-host Dave Martin. Son, what's going on, man?
Hey man, you see Jake Gyllenhaal in that Spider-Man trailer? Looks pretty good.
I actually haven't gotten to see the Spider-Man trailer. Give me the quick breakdown.
It's pretty standard stuff. Samuel Jackson's in it. They're in Venice, which I thought was interesting. But everyone's making a big deal about Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. He looks pretty
Yes.
good, and it's one of those. It's kind of like Aquaman, making a ridiculous looking comic book character look kind of decent on screen. So we'll see. It comes out in July.
Looking forward to that. We talked about that on our most anticipated album. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, please circle back and check that out. And you can find us, listen to us anywhere that you can listen to podcasts, including YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. Follow those links there just to listen to it wherever you prefer. We mostly appreciate the feedback on YouTube and iTunes. Give us that rating 5 stars and give us that feedback. Help us grow. We're going to be talking pretty much the whole gambit today. We're going to be talking movies, TV, music, and Oscar predictions. It's funny. I was thinking about this week because we're still in a bit of a lull. Things are starting to ramp back up. But then next week, we got how many albums? 6, 7?
I have 7 written down. Don't know if we'll talk about all of them, but I have 7 on my radar.
We got quite a few to talk about next week. So it's really starting to ramp up. The ones that came out this past week are by not as popular artists. One we've talked about before, Wifisfuneral, collaborating with Robb Banks with Connected, with the threes. I'm not sure. Am I supposed to say Connected 33? I don't think so.
I'm just Connected, I think. Yeah.
Right. We talked about Wifisfuneral. I think we mentioned him as, was he someone who could be on the XXL this year?
No, he made it last year.
Made it last year.
Correct calls we had.
That's right. One of the correct calls you had for sure. So tell me, what did you think about this album, Connected, collaborating with Robb Banks?
Yeah, the only reason I really put on the docket this week is just, again, there was not a whole lot else. But also, I feel like Wi-Fi is still pretty slept on as far as newer rappers go, as far as Florida rappers go. So I just wanted to give him more shine with that. But yeah, I thought it was solid. It's not his best work. I'd say if you like Wi-Fi, or if you're interested in this, go listen to Ethernet, which we reviewed, or listen to his Boy Who Cried Wolf tape. But this, Robb Banks has never really impressed me much, another Florida rapper, and that didn't really change on this. But the Wi-Fi, for a 30-minute tape, it's all produced by Chris Tenera, one producer. For, a low-stakes project like this, I think he still can, have some moments here or there, make an impression. I think it just kind of goes to his strengths we talked about before. His flow's pretty effortless. He can kind of bounce on any beat, and I think he does that. I think Chris Tenera's beats, they're all pretty moody, a lot of drums here. Yeah. But I thought Wi-Fi did pretty well. Robb Banks, honestly, I thought it was a bit of a letdown, but there were a few songs where they kind of went back and forth, and I thought actually had some real chemistry. Those are probably the few moments they might have been in the studio together. I thought I Can't Feel My Face, one of the first few songs was like that. But overall, it's low stakes. It's second week in January, new music. It's totally skippable. But I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I think okay is pretty much exactly where I was at with it. Where I left feeling like, that was fine. I'm not mad I listened to it. I'm not super thrilled I listened to it. It wasn't anything where I was like, I'm gonna be telling everybody about this. There were a couple songs that stood out. EA I thought was pretty good. Can't Feel My Face was another one that stood out. And I kind of liked Moving Slow as well. It's just kind of the highlights for me. But overall, I think we have way more to look forward to with Wi-Fi than this. And like you said, his past project, Ethernet, is a much better project and shows a little bit more of his range and ability. So please check that one out. And give us your thoughts on this. Any last thoughts on this one though? Because I kind of want to talk about Comethazine a little more.
No, yeah, that's it. Support Wi-Fi, listen to the other stuff.
Bawskee too.
Yeah.
What?
Bawskee. Yeah, you got it.
Who is this guy? Tell me about Comethazine.
Do we have to?
Yeah.
So the reason I want to talk about Comethazine is not for his musical talent, which there's very little of.
Oh shit.
And not for his past music, which I'm not a fan of, but really just about how he became famous. He got relatively well known quickly at the beginning of last year. You might remember YB and Namir's Bounce Out with That song that dropped at the beginning of last year. And a song I like, 2-minute banger from Namir. It's pretty good. Cole Bennett video, whatnot. But that song initially was just on SoundCloud, and Comethazine uploaded a track with that as the name before it was actually on SoundCloud, and got a lot of a lot of streams, right? Because everyone liked that song. Wasn't actually on YouTube yet, whatever, right? Then he did like the replace file feature in SoundCloud, something we've used a lot because that's our podcast host. He replaced the file with one of his own songs, therefore keeping all of the streams he got and keeping his chart placement in the SoundCloud top 50. So he basically like finessed and defrauded his way into SoundCloud fame by like replacing his song. Like he stripped down the beat, sounded kind of similar. The next thing everyone knows, wait a minute, this is not the song you're listening to, and all these plays are fake. And then his label was like, well, sorry, you got us. Yeah. So, and then all that for this dude that's like so unoriginal, so uninspired. It's just so disappointing that someone so lame could get this much notoriety, but that's where we're at. And I think Bawskee too, much like Bawskee from last August, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Not only did I feel like he was bad on it, I found his, I mean, a lot of his stuff is just like very outlandish and just kind of like things I don't enjoy listening about anyway. But I just kind of found it very unmemorable. And I mean, it was quick. It's a quick album. It's only 17 minutes, which maybe speaks to a lack of inspiration, or maybe speaks to artistic choice. But I didn't. Not only did I think he was bad, but the production on this was very. I felt like disjointed and not really done well. Kind of rushed. Just overall sounded not like a finished product at all.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the fact that I got bored with something that was 17 minutes long says a lot about the lack of variety. But I think my issue with Comethazine, just as like an artist, is that there's nothing to him. He has no flair. He's so artificial, and his flows are just little pumping 6ix9ine flows. There's nothing going on here, and it's not like braggadocio and materialism and hyperbole. That's nothing new in this scene at all. Right. But at least be bringing something to the table, but he's not doing anything. So it just sounds ridiculous. And then also, you made a rap song about DeMar DeRozan of all basketball players. I like that, but he's kind of at the low on the list of guys worthy of naming a song after, just saying. So yeah, I think Comethazine is kind of the worst SoundCloud rapper there is right now.
But doesn't DeMar DeRozan as a song kind of encapsulate who he is as an artist? Like, all right, exactly. This is I am the DeMar DeRozan of SoundCloud rap. All right, cool. Good for you, dude. Enjoy that. So give us your thoughts on the album. I'm sure that there are people out there who stand for him.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
Why don't we jump next to, let's go to True Detective. True Detective, Season 3. Why don't we do a quick temperature check? Where were we at with True Detective Season 1? Fan or not a fan, Dave?
Big fan. It was one of those first shows of I came with 2011, so it was one of those first shows of like the peak TV era. You know, the starting to occupy the post Breaking Bad space. Breaking Bad was still on that time, but first like should really kind of give us like a sense of what TV is like now, and really usher in that limited series boom that we're in, right? And I really liked it. I think for a lot of reasons, most people liked it, which was movie stars on TV, which was still a little newer back then. McConaughey and Harrelson, of course, leading the way, and coupled with really standout direction from Cary Fukunaga. It just looked really cool. It was acted well, and frankly, Fukunaga and the acting talent, kind of elevated everything else from Pizzolatto. But you know, I think there's been a lot of criticism of the season as well, maybe how it ended, how it treated female characters. I'd recommend Emily Nussbaum's review in the New Yorker for more on that. But overall, I still liked it, and I still think it is pretty effective as a season, a limited series, and as like a mystery crime show and whatnot. I mean, I don't know if we've really talked much about it, but what was your take on season 1 way back in 11?
Yeah, I mean, I love season 1. I agree. I think the second half of the season didn't come together as well as the first part, where it was really just McConaughey and Harrelson getting to sit in a car and just be their weird character. Especially McConaughey got to kind of be his weird self in a lot of ways. Season 2 is just a mess in a lot of ways. I mean, I guess the image I have of season 2 is Vince Vaughn walking through the desert, like half dead with all hallucinating. And I feel like that just kind of encapsulates the season. They had a lot of ideas, but also some production issues. And I think with all that talent, I mean, you had Colin Farrell, you had Taylor Kitsch, you had
Rachel McAdams.
Yes, thank you. The fact that season 2 was such a flop is probably one of the most disappointing TV seasons in recent history.
Yeah, and it's funny because True Detective season 1 was 14, not 11. I don't know why I said 11, but season 2 was Fast Track, came out right after in 2015. And remember, the True Detective season 2 meme was going about casting the show. There's a lot of hype going into season 2, and then without Fukunaga involved to form the visuals, I think Pizzolatto just kind of got lost in his sauce a little bit, because Taylor Kitsch was a gay character. Rachel McAdams was supposed to be a strong female character, but still kind of didn't totally work. And ultimately, the show was just really muddled and kind of lost the charm of season 1. I think season 3, at least for the first 2 episodes that we've seen, really seems to be focusing on what made season 1 appealing and kind of throwing away what season 2 tried to do.
Yeah, and I also think the plot, you kind of talk about getting lost in the sauce, the plot of it, and focusing on this governmental conspiracy with the highways, and there was some very strong overtones of Illuminati and just these secret groups. It was Rachel McAdams at one point is almost sold into a sex trade. I forgot about the whole plot, to be honest, but I do remember that episode now. It's an incredibly muddled plot. So there was a lot of issues with it. So season 3 coming out, just premiered this past weekend, dropped the first 2 episodes, starring Mahershala Ali. That was good news. Still, Nick Pizzolatto is behind this, and we saw season 2 flop. We don't have one director kind of coming through to man the helm. It's being doled out piecemeal in part. It's really 3 people: Jeremy Saulnier, Nick Pizzolatto himself, and Daniel Sackheim, and they're taking different parts of the season for the most part. We were both pretty optimistic for this. How did you feel like the season premiere felt for your expectations of this show?
I'm feeling good about this season. I think part of the charm of this season for me was knowing that's only 8 episodes, so there's just less runtime for mistakes, and stringing out a story that doesn't have enough meat on the bone to justify such a long runtime. So I think that's a smart choice for starters. And we've already seen 2, so there's only 6 more weeks. That's appealing to me for an HBO show. And this, like I said before, I think it's really getting back to the appeal of season 1. We have 2 investigators working together. They have different experiences and outlooks on life from what we've seen so far. And there's this case that really seems to be consuming them. Obviously, the multiple timelines is a little bit like season 1, but I think they're really going a little further with it this time, with 3 distinct timelines: 1980 and 1990 and 2015.
Right.
But yeah, I'm optimistic from what I've seen so far. What was your read?
Yeah, I'm incredibly optimistic about it. I think the timelines is really interesting in 2 ways. Not only is it interesting in terms of telling this narrative and kind of looking at how the case develops over time, but then also it's being told from the perspective of Mahershala Ali's character, who Detective Hayes has memory issues. He's either suffering from early Alzheimer's in the 1980s, or was it 1980s, and then 2015, he's obviously kind of full blown encapsulated by, it's either Alzheimer's or dementia of some sort. I don't know if they specify at all. But so that leaves some questions in the narrative, and what we're seeing is real or not. I think that's going to kind of lead to some of the gaps that we're going to have to fill in. And it's almost like we kind of relearn pieces of the case with Mahershala, as his character in 2015 is, re-illuminated to these facts that he probably has forgotten based on his illness. I think that's a really interesting spin to the season.
Yeah, and I think they made a distinct choice early on, telling us that what's her name, Julie, the girl, survives. Or at least her prints pop up in the 90s, right?
Right.
And by telling us that, by kind of, quote, spoiling what's going to happen in the 80s timeline, the fact that they did that so early, I think, just expresses confidence in what's we're actually going to see on the 80s timeline. So I like that choice. And speaking to the timelines again, watching them kind of like folding on each other as Mahershala, wherever he is, starts like talking to the camera from a different time. I think that's the smart choice. Nice way to transition settings. I thought that was pretty effective through 2 episodes.
Yep.
And then, it just kind of has the vibe. This is, True Detective season 1 was more deep South, right? More like Southern Gothic or whatever. But this is like the Ozarks, I think, like Fayetteville, Arkansas, I want to say. Yep. And that's more, I guess, like rural suburbs is the vibe. And we're clearly in a post-Vietnam era for the 80 timeline. And we've seen a lot of that already with both Wayne and like the Scrap character, both having like, PTSD as veterans and whatnot. That they're doing that well. And then we've already seen a lot of signs of, a lot of people are talking about like the satanic panic and just kind of societal fears of the time of the 80s. So I think they're really setting the mood there well. I want to see more from the 90 timeline. Again, all we've seen so far is like a few conversations, right? At like desks in like a restaurant or whatever. We haven't seen a lot there. We finally got the revelation about those prints, so we'll see. But I like the 80s vibe for sure. And not that we need to really say much on that, but the acting is well. I think obviously much to be made about Mahershala's first real lead as a TV actor. He's been on TV forever. Most of us probably know him from House of Cards as Remy Danton, but I really like Stephen Dorff so far as Roland, his partner, just because the juxtaposition of their experiences in a rural white area is already coming out, and their different views and whatnot. And then even like smaller roles, like I really like Karen and Njogo, or how do you say Njogo? And as Amelia. Not that we've had a lot of her talking as a character without a relationship to Wayne coming in, but I still think they have good chemistry so far. And then like Scoot McNairy in like a bit role, he's been in everything. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then shout out his son in the 2015 timeline, Wayne's son. Yeah, that's Ray Fisher, who's Cyborg from Justice League. Maybe not the best role, but at least it's something for him.
Well, it seems like there was more conflict to come with that role at the end of episode 2, so he might get a little bit more to play with there. I think Carmen Ejogo has actually been the standout for me. Mahershala he's a class act actor. He's going to be the favorite to step on one of our segments for the best supporting actor at the Oscars. He just won at the Globes. He's won an Oscar in the past. He's just a phenomenal actor. So there's no surprises there. I think he plays this role so perfectly, and to play this person at 3 different parts of their life, I can imagine is also difficult, but at the same time probably helpful to conceptualize who this person was earlier to actually play it, and then get to kind of play it as they develop and then get older. Amelia, though, seems to be, for me, the key to this season, because while Mahershala is obviously going to be the one doing the heavy lifting, or the majority of it, Amelia seems to be the one who is going to be helping him to really uncover the secrets. And I wonder, and this is a little bit of my own theorizing, I wonder if she's going to be involved in this disappearance or these murders at all in some some respect, and how that might not only create family issues in 2015 as Mahershala is kind of missing her, but probably doesn't remember some of the things that happened, but also maybe how that led to pieces of the case interfering in their personal lives and the 1990 timeline. That's just my like early theory on it, but she's so mysterious at this point. I'm like, there's got to be more there than just this.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna lean away from that just because like she writes a true crime book, and like that's some pretty cocky shit to write true
Hiding
crime
in plain sight, dog.
A crime you committed.
Yeah. Oh well, you know, if OJ did it, that he wrote how he would have done it. So
That's true.
not that outlandish. I also one thing to kind of point out. You mentioned, you know, the satanic hysteria back in the 70s, and one thing I think is really interesting is it seems like there might be some ties to season 1 within this, that this is happening in the same universe. I don't know if season 2 is going to be tied in. I kind of hope they just throw it by the wayside. But how do you feel about that, about season 1 being maybe like residually tied in here?
Yeah, I mean, thematically, it kind of is already a little connected in terms of the symbolism, iconography of like finding the victims, right? You know, it's the same kind of thing. And whether the Yellow King actually shows up in this season or not, yeah, I think thematically they're connected, and geographically, timeline wise, it all kind of makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised if that came to be, but even if it's just thematically, I think it's a smart decision, like I said.
Yeah, I think if anything, for True Detective to be successful moving forward, there needs to be a bit of continuity, even if it's. I think the anthology format makes a lot of sense, just because these backup actors aren't going to want to play these roles forever. But I think having some kind of world building with it is going to be a huge plus for the show down the line. I wanted to ask you, do you have any early theories on the season? Because this is probably my favorite part about it, is like just kind of trying to figure out the murder ahead of what we know.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go and say that I don't think we've seen the killer / kidnapper yet, because we hadn't seen the killer / kidnapper this early in season 1. We briefly see Glenn Fleshler as the Yellow King and on the tractor, like in episode 3 or 4. Then we don't see him again towards the end. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's being slow play. Like there's some obvious red herrings, like those 3 punk kids from the school. It's not them, I think, and like someone that everyone else wants to blame, like the trash guy collector. It's not gonna be him either, you know. And like the kid that the guy that they kidnap, the cops kidnap and like rough up and think he's suspect, but he's like so obvious. Like I don't think it's him either. So I don't really think we've seen him yet. But I mean, it'd be pretty wild if it's Amelia, like you said.
Well, what do you think about the uncle of the kids?
Yeah, I think this is introduced too early. I think it's
too early.
It's a false flag.
I like it. I like that you're sticking with we haven't seen him yet, and you're probably right. But it's fun to theorize. Any other thoughts around the show or anything that stood out to you?
No, I'm actually happy that the linear ratings, which I mean, linear ratings are kind of irrelevant, but as terms of pure linear ratings, it was right on line with Big Little Lies' premiere and Sharp Objects' premiere from last year. It's down from True Detective season 1 and 2. But ratings as a whole are down since then, so it's not really a good analog. But it's I wouldn't be surprised if, like those other shows, it continues to build up steam throughout the season, and I hope it does, because I think this is occupying a nice time in the calendar, both for HBO, who has a big year coming up, but also for everyone else. There's not a lot of note on at this moment, so I think a lot of people should have time to tune in, and probably will.
I'm happy about the show's success, and definitely I think we highly recommend it at this point. So please check it out. Let us know your thoughts. Give us some comments on that YouTube video to spark conversation, and give me your theories. You can hit us up on Twitter at Nowstalgia Pod. Hit me up with your theories there, because I really want to. I want to figure this out before the season shows us what happens.
You sound like a Westworld viewer to me. Give me those theories.
Yeah, but at least I got Mahershala to lean on, and not some some poor and uninspired performances on Westworld. But if you want to hear our Westworld thoughts, go back and check that out in our archives. We talked about that a lot.
Video's called Westworld Sucks, if you didn't
know. I wanted to jump next to On the Basis of Sex. I recently watched RBG, the documentary this year that made quite a bit of money for documentaries. I mean, we talked about documentaries having a great year in 2018, and on the basis of sex by directed by Mimi Leder, starring Felicity Jones, Armie Hammer, with a great supporting cast: Justin Theroux, Sam Waterston, Stephen Root, just a couple of them. I feel like it captures a lot of the essence of what's kind of brought up in the documentary. And the documentary covers RBG's entire life, and the film only focuses on really her beginning of grad school to the time that she defends her first case in front of a state Supreme Court, the Colorado State Supreme Court, I should say. I think it's a well done movie. Ultimately forgettable, but I feel like kind of where I want to start the discussion is Felicity Jones's performance, because while I feel like this is a nice film and one that I enjoy watching and I won't mind going back to down the line, I don't know if she really captures RBG. What it means to be Ruth Bader Ginsburg in that full essence. I think she gives a good performance, but there's something about Ruth Bader Ginsburg as like this woman who with this, I don't know, this staunchness and this ability to like have this great presence and this calmness and this confidence that comes through in almost any situation. I mean, she's the notorious not defender. She writes the dissenter, yes, the notorious dissenter of the Supreme Court. And I don't know if Jones gives her that gravitas in this role. What did you think?
I mean, do they capture a lot of that in the RBG doc? I haven't seen the doc, but like, do they capture a lot of what she was like when she was young?
Basically, the way that they frame her in the documentary is that she was this very serious girl who was incredibly smart, and who was incredibly capable and just kind of overcame all these obstacles that were placed in front of her. And a lot of them that they talk about and they show in the film, her husband having these illness, facing blatant sexism. But they do highlight for her how she had all of these moments throughout her life where she basically had this obstacle put in front of her, people blatantly saying to her, you can't do this. And she just was like, nah, I'm going to do it anyway. Like, I'm going to figure it out. And I think that the relationship that they show in the movie is pretty spot on for what they describe in the doc, that Martin was kind of like the heart and soul of the family, that he was kind of driving force, and RBG was really like the brains and the just the overall smarts. And not taking anything away from Martin Ginsburg, who seems to be an incredibly accomplished and brilliant man himself, but just brought more heart and kind of that like sturdiness, whereas RBG was just like fully intellectual and fully like pushing boundaries all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have really an issue with it. I mean, for me, I just kind of went in with an open mind because like the whole notorious RBG persona that like most people today think of, we all think of her as an older woman, right? I mean, this movie set way before that. Like, she didn't get put on the Supreme Court till she was 60 years old. She's like 85 now. So like we're way before that. So I don't really have a problem with her like persona not being like fully developed yet. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean, if we didn't pick Felicity Jones, who are we gonna pick? Because in terms of like in-demand actors for a movie that at one time had award aspirations, I mean, she fits that mold. She's been nominated before. She's also quite short. I think she fits, and she's a talented actress. I think look at her, a lot of her recent choices. She's done a lot of different things. So having her just kind of fill in and be like a strong, independent woman in face of a lot of challenges at the time, I think she did pretty well. I mean, I think my issues with the film, I like the film. I think it's really enjoyable and the message is strong, but I think it's just the whole movie itself is just kind of simple, if that makes sense, where it's kind of a traditional, straightforward biopic for good and bad, And I think because the cast is pretty well done and charming, and because the message is really well delivered at the end, you kind of overlook that. I think ultimately the reason this movie didn't pick up enough award steam, and while there is a middling review or two out there about this, is just because what you see is what you get. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know who was originally supposed to play RBG in this and backed out for? I don't really remember the reason.
I don't know.
It wasn't. It was supposed to be Natalie Portman.
Huh. I mean, she's done a lot of historical figures recently. She did Jackie Kennedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That's honestly kind of a similar mold. Someone who does a lot of different things, smaller woman,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I guess I go back to kind of that moment where she starts to give her appeal or to the Colorado State Supreme Court, where she kind of starts to talk and then like trips over her words a bit. And they actually come back to this in the doc, and RBG herself is like, yeah, I like the film, but I never tripped over my words. And like just the way she delivered it, I was like, that's the fucking attitude right there. That like, even though she faced all these like difficult obstacles, she always like took them on with grace and like strength that I think came across at points in the movie, and other times it felt like she was almost like gaining that strength from her daughter in ways, which I thought was a really interesting dynamic. Who I forgot to write down what that actress's name was, but she was, I think, fantastic in the film.
Yeah, she'll be, I forgot her name too. She'll be in that new Alice Garland show Devs coming out later this year. So looking forward to that. Yeah, I think, and perhaps that's some creative license, right? Even though it's supposed to be more or less presented as biopic.
Dramatic effect.
Yeah, and ultimately, it just doesn't really transcend the source material, which again is some pretty interesting and pretty compelling stuff considering it's RPG, right? But ultimately, I think it's well done because the themes of sexism and equality and really just that courtroom scene at the end, I think is kind of tough to deny. But ultimately, I think it's just kind of probably disappointed some people that wanted it to be like a much bigger movie. Like, why wasn't this Darkest Hour? There just wasn't a lot of flair with this, and I think part of that's probably the direction, part of that's probably the screenplay. It's all just kind of simple and straightforward. It's like, hey, we're gonna make a movie about RBG in this time, and that's what they did. No more, no less. So, I recommend it. I think the cast is pretty strong. I mean, it's nice to see Armie Hammer kind of playing like something besides like the leading man, and while it's funny to watch them because Armie Hammer's like 6'4" and Felicity Jones is like what 5'2" or whatever. Like there's that one scene, I'm like, wow, they never show height differences like that. That was that was interesting. But I thought they had a nice warm relationship, and they're both just charismatic people. I thought Stephen Root and Watterson, I mean, they're fine, they're good actors, but I mean, they're pretty one note as like quote villains, right? My other one note was Jack Rayner, who plays like their young lawyer working for them. He literally looked like Sam Darnold in this movie to me, and I was disappointed considering what he was saying.
I'm definitely gonna bring that back up when football season comes. Well, football season for you comes back around. My season just started this past weekend.
You got the draft in 3 months, son.
But no, I agree. I think I really like Justin Theroux in this film. Although I gotta be honest, they kind of gave Mia Wolf like a bad painted him in a bad light here. Just kind of as like kind of a pussy at the whatever point that they find him in his career here, where he's kind of stopped taking on these things. And I guess Ruth in some way inspires him, or is supposed to inspire him to like continue fighting, which I guess is a really nice message. I agree on Armie Hammer. I thought he was probably my favorite part of the film, but he gets to be like that charming, like just kind of fun guy who is like the strength of the film and is doing the right thing all the time. It's a great role for him to be in. And goddamn, for Martin Ginsburg, I mean, no offense to him. He, like I said, very accomplished person. Someday I hope to get the glow up that he's gotten in a film.
Yeah.
If Armie Hammer can play me someday, like Timothy Chalamet doing the Pat Sheehan story in like 10 years. Please, God. But no, I definitely recommend it. Check it out. I think it's a good film, not great. and probably one we won't be talking about for award season. But who will we be talking about for award season, Dave? Let's do some Oscar predictions. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so the Oscar nominations are coming on the 22nd. We figured we'd try and predict what's going to happen ahead of time. And then once the noms come out, we won't actually do our official predictions till right before the ceremony. So this is the last we'll talk about those for, a few more weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're going to talk about the major categories, ones we normally talk about: acting, screenplays, director, picture, the usual suspects. And it's interesting because since the Globes happened, which was a big kerfuffle, which we talked about, the good and the bad of the Globes last week, so check that out, YouTube, SoundCloud, all that. Since then, only a week later, a lot of Green Book news, and not for good reasons, right? And the question is, and this is the big question, is does that matter enough during this voting period? Will it affect enough people to change minds and swing races? That's my main question, because I think a lot of the noms, in fact, a lot of the favorites, are really starting to fall into place. And whether you think A or B will win, it's pretty clear that A, B, and C will be there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm pretty confident in I'd say 3/4 of every category right now. It's just a matter of who actually ends up winning and who fills up the bottom of the list for me. But what are your thoughts right now?
Yeah, I'm most interested to see. I guess the best picture race and the main the best actor and the best actress race are probably the two that I'm most interested in, or the three I'm most interested in, only because I feel like no matter what happens, there's going to be one or two people in each category that I feel like really, really deserve a nomination based on their performances or based on the film's overall ability as a piece of art, or credence as a piece of art, that are just not going to be able to get nominated based on the limitations. I guess maybe we should start with the lower, maybe the less anticipated categories, like best adapted screenplay or best original screenplay. Adapted screenplay, I mean, it feels like there's probably 6 in the race, maybe 7. The lock's got to be Klansman, right? Black Klansman, Beale Street, and A Star Is Born.
Yep. I'd also throw Can You Ever Forgive Me in there. That movie's getting a lot of down ballot attention. It's probably going to get a fair amount of noms and maybe not win anything,
Mm-hmm.
And that would leave 4. So it's all a matter of what's the 5th spot. I would, of course, Kate for First Man. And I think First Man's close, but does it get in there?
I mean, right now, looking at Gold Derby, has Black Panther 23-2. First Man's a 20-1 odd. There's also Death of Stalin, Crazy Rich Asians, and Leave No Trace, which, man, I mean, I feel like any of those could be deserving. I would probably want Black Panther to get in there, because I think it makes sense that, especially because the Oscars, they're going without a host, but they're going to be basically bringing all the Avengers on stage. Like, you should be celebrating these superhero movies. I know that they get a knock, but they are the highest earning movies reliably right now, along with horror films. And if you make a quality one, it should be rewarded. So I hope Black Panther gets it. I would probably bet First Man gets nominated for this, though.
Yeah, I mean, remember Logan kind of broke down that barrier to a certain extent last year, 2 years ago, when it got the best adapted nom as well. So it's not totally unspoken for, but a Marvel Studios film really crossing over beyond the technical categories would be big. And I mean, we'll talk about Black Panther and Best Picture in a second, but I think we're probably going to see some of that. Over on Best Original Screenplay, I think that's probably a much more interesting race, just because, I mean, there's 3 there's 2 that are guaranteed. I'd say the favorite is probably my choice to win, just because that's a screenplay that really stands out. And check our review on the film, but it has an identity as a screenplay, as a script, right? And the Yorgos effect. So that's obvious. Roma is a Best Picture front runner. That's a given. Then after that, Vice, Green Book. We've talked about the screenplay not being a strength of the film, to say the least. Will it still get this nom? Is it slipping? The problem is what will take the place. I think First Reformed. They're really campaigning for that. That's like the really award they're focusing on. They kind of gave up on Ethan Hawke, unfortunately. A24 really wants this for Paul Schrader. I think it should win, or sorry, at least nominate. I think it'll get there. So that's 4. But is Green Book going to hang on? Because like, what's going to take the spot? Are you going to give it to Sorry to Bother You? I'd love to see that. I don't think it's going to happen. 8th Grade, Quiet Place. I don't see that either. So I think Green Book is just going to hang in there.
A Quiet Place really fascinates me, especially because, last year, Get Out. Jordan Peele won for, I think it was Best Original Screenplay, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to see if they basically, A Quiet Place taking the place of Get Out. It's a horror movie that came out earlier in the year, did really well at the box office, was a bit of a phenomena. I wonder if it could be, if it could get there. I don't see Green Book coming out of it though. And if I was a betting man, I would bet that it'd be all the ones that you mentioned right up front, that it would be The Favorite, Roma, Vice, Green Book, and First Reformed. I think First Reformed is going to make it in there, and I really hope it does. It's a film that's going to be under-nominated this year for how good it was, and that's probably going to be my biggest disappointment of the Oscars just in general, is that it doesn't get enough love. Even though it wasn't one of my favorite films of the year, it was up there, but I still think it deserves to get credit for what it accomplished. Why don't we jump to the best supporting categories? Let's start with best supporting actor. So we already mentioned Mahershala for Green Book. He's the favorite. He's probably going to win. He's a lock. After that, I feel like it's kind of wide open. Richard E. Grant for Can You Ever Forgive Me seems like he's probably going to get there. Sam Elliott, I assume. Who?
This is another one where it's kind of a weak category, right? So it's like when I saw Sam Elliott in the Star Report, I was like, I like Sam Elliott. I thought it was fine. Supporting role is good, but he wasn't in the movie that much. He probably won't hang on for this award. But who are you going to replace him with, right? Mentioned Mahershala. You mentioned Richard Grant's the upset pick if it happens. Chalamet's going to get nominated for Beautiful Boy, but isn't going to win. And they really didn't push that at all. I don't think he's shook in a whole hand, one whole hand for the film all season. So that's fine. And then you have Sam Elliott and Adam Driver, I guess, for Black Klansman. Like, unless they do Sam Rockwell, they go all in on Vice. Like what? Daniel Kaluuya for Widows. Widows is probably going to get almost nothing, if anything at all. Brian Tyree Henry for Beale Street. That would be my choice, but it's only one scene, and Beale Street is getting slightly overlooked throughout the season. So, I won't get my hopes up.
If Brian Tyree Henry gets nominated, that's the Hannibal Lecter nomination right there. Where basically, I'm forgetting his name. I'm blanking a lot today, but the actor who played him won Best Supporting Actor for. Yeah, Anthony Hopkins won for like 12 minutes in the film. Like that's almost the exact same amount of time that Brian Tyree Henry. Yeah. So I wonder if Michael B. Jordan could get in there. He's pretty well liked by the Academy.
It's true. The problem is I think there is some dislike for that performance. Some people think it's too over the top. I'm not one of those people, but I've heard that more than once. Also, like, shout out Tom Waits and Buster Scruggs. Not going to happen, but that'd be cool. Like Paul Giamatti in Private Life. There are tons of great performances that I would love to see recognized, but they're just not realistic, right? So, yeah, I think this one is like, it's kind of boring, because it's like Sam Elliott and Driver are just kind of going in because you're not going to pick the other people. So, yeah, it's whatever.
Who would you want? Like, let's say we know it's those top 3. Who would be the 2 that you personally would want? I guess I'd probably want Chalamet and Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah, I'd root for Chalamet, and then let's go
Brian
off
Tyree.
There's other types of film. Let's recognize Daniel Kaluuya. That was a great performance.
Yeah,
and then Brian Tyree Henry. Why not?
Yeah, Kaluuya is so intimidating. We talked about it when we reviewed the pod, but just like what he does with his eyes in that film, he is probably the best actor with just one part of his body. We're moving off that comment quick. Best supporting actress. So Regina King won at the Globes. She's I assume a heavy favorite for this.
Mhm.
But then it's interesting because I mean the Globe nominations were probably got it right for the most part. But I mean, so you probably have Amy Adams coming behind her for Vice, Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz.
Yep.
For that fifth spot, I would love to see Nicole Kidman get it, and she would get it for Boy Erased, but I would want her to almost get it as like for Destroyer, like it's like to
Yeah.
recognize that performance because she's not going to get into the Best Actress category, I don't think,
Right.
but she deserves it.
Yeah. She's really good in in Destroyer, but that's a lead role, and
Right.
she's good in Boy Erased as well. But that's a performance we've seen from her before. That's like her performance in Lion, right?
Mhm.
Um, So yeah, I mean, then on the other hand, Nicole Kidman's been honored plenty. It's not like anyone's crying over her
Sure.
not getting another nomination. So it's like that fifth spot. I think everyone's just kind of penciling in Claire Foy from First Man, and that's again, it's relatively because I mean, we can pick Michelle Yeoh from Crazy Rich Asians. I think that's a bit of a stretch if the movie's not going to get much else, And then like Thomasin McKenzie from Leave No Trace. That movie probably won't get much of anything either, and it's probably just gonna be overlooked. So that's another tough sell to me. So yeah, I'm probably just gonna it'll be Claire Foy, fifth place, no chance spot.
Yeah, well, so since that seems like a pretty sure lock, why don't we jump into the Best Actor category? We know the favorites. There's probably three that are up there: Bradley Cooper, Christian Bale, and Rami Malek. A Star Is Born, Vice, and Bohemian Rhapsody, which won the Golden Globe for best film, best drama. Check out our discussion on that last week because I think I still haven't really recovered. But those three are almost a lock. Vigo for Green Book. Green Book's taking a hit right now. Do you think he could possibly fall out of this category?
This is another one where I think we've talked about this race a lot, right? We mentioned Ethan Hawke, mentioned a lot of Robert Redford. We mentioned a lot of people that we assume were in the mix for this, right? And I think the ultimate problem for me is I looked at the SAG nominations. The actors comprise the biggest block of the voting academy. And the SAGs went Cooper, Malik, Bale, Vigo, John David Washington from BlacKkKlansman. And as much as I might pick other people, I think that's just kind of what we're going to get unless there's some real evangelizing for Redford and Hawke or Willem Dafoe for Matt Attorney's Gate. Like I think this is kind of just going to go chalk, and I don't think Vigo has any shot at winning. But I don't think anyone's really holding Green Book's faults against Vigo as a performer. Everyone's just kind of given him and Mahershala a pass for the movie, right? And also thought they were pretty good along the way. So, I think I'm just going to defer to that. But I mean, I would root for. I mean, and like Ryan Gosling, if First Man had done better and was bigger all season, that would have made more sense. But I don't think he has a chance now. So it's really hard to foresee anyone else stepping in. Given the scope of the movies they're representing. I mean, Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible. I've mentioned it before. That's not going to happen, but I wish it would.
Yeah, if I could hope for one person to get in that fifth spot, it definitely wouldn't be Willem Dafoe. I didn't think he was that good in Aquaman, actually. No, but I mean, I talked about it on our Best of Pod. I love Redford's performance. I would love to see him get that legacy nomination, especially since it's supposedly his last movie. Hawke would also be great, but it's most likely going to be those five. And I'm just happy for John David Washington. If I had to put money on it, I think Christian Bale will probably win. I think Cooper's gonna not gonna take it home, but we'll see. To be seen in this category. It feels a bit more wide open than some of the supporting roles. Best Actress, Glenn Close, definitely nominated. Lady Gaga, definitely nominated. Olivia Colman, seems like a lock.
Definitely.
And then Melissa McCarthy, a lock for Can You Ever Forgive Me? That fifth spot, though, a bit more open. You know who I want to get in here? Yalitza Aparicio. Because goddamn, was she excellent in Roma for her first role too. She deserves the nomination. But who would you want to see get that fifth spot?
Yeah, you already mentioned Kidman. I really like Regina Hall and Support the Girls. I really like Elsie Fisher in 8th Grade. A lot of people like Toni Collette in Hereditary. There's a lot of good picks for this. Viola Davis, Rosamund Pike in A Private War. I thought she was really good.
Carey Mulligan in Wildlife.
Of course, yeah. There's a lot, and then there's other ones that don't seem to have a chance, like Saoirse Ronan, who was recently nominated for this, right? Kiki Lane in Another Year might have got to sneak in here as a newcomer, but I think that fifth spot will probably just default to Emily Blunt. A lot of people thought Mary Poppins Returns would get more nominations than it's probably going to, but no one's really denied that Blunt's the best part of the film and well liked, and you can almost see it as a dual nom considering she was also in A Quiet Place. So I'm going to default to that, and I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, and who do you got to win? Close?
No, I have Coleman winning. I'm just looking at that.
That'd be awesome.
Because like I said with the Globes, Close and Coleman and Close and Gaga did not go head to head with Coleman, so we don't know that yet. And I think Coleman's the winner.
That'd be great, and I really hope that either her or Gaga pull it out. Nothing against Glenn Close. Haven't seen The Wife, so I can't really speak to her performance. I'm just going off what I've seen. Best Director, Alfonso Cuarón, heavy favorite. I would almost guarantee gonna get nominated and win this, but Bradley Cooper's also in it for A Star Is Born, Black Klansman. Spike Lee seems like he's a pretty sure bet. Then Yorgos, I think for the favorite, will probably get the nomination.
Fucking better get in.
I just really want to see Barry Jenkins get nominated, man. Like, I feel like he's on the outside looking in, though.
Yeah, well, here the problem is Peter Farrelly for Green Book, right? No matter whose spot he takes, he's taking a spot, right? Yep. Like you mentioned Yorgos, Barry Jenkins, Chazelle,
Adam McKay,
Coogler, Pavel Plavosky for Cold War, who's gotten some love. All of them are better picks than Peter Farrelly. Green Book is a conventionally old school directed film. He's not like the star of why that movie works for people. So that's going to be very disappointing if he gets in there. The controversies around Green Book, some of them directly relate to him. We'd like to think they would honor Barry Jenkins, someone they'd honored before. So, and Yorgos, I mean, watch The Favorite and tell me that wasn't directed unlike anything else. Like, right. That's a colossal snub if it's the Yorgos they don't pick. So it's really up to what happens with Farrelly, honestly.
Yeah, I really hope Farrelly doesn't get in. My pick would be Jenkins, but if McKay or Coogler gets in there over Farrelly, that'd be great. I think those top four you really can't touch, though. Like Spike Lee, I think deserves it. Cooper, Cuarón, and Lanthimos all stand out. Why don't we round it out here? So we got 8 spots for Best Picture. Right now on Gold Derby, interestingly, maybe these are old odds I'm looking at. I don't think so, though. It would have Bohemian Rhapsody on the outside looking in. Do you see that happening, that the Golden Globe winner for Best Drama could potentially not even be nominated?
Well, Best Picture is up. You can get up to 10 nominations, right? Not guaranteed. You don't have to pick 10, but you can get up to 10, right?
I thought it was only 8, but that was...
Well, when they expanded after The Dark Knight didn't make it for 2009, they made it 10. And then a few years later, they switched it to like up to 10, and I think at least 5, maybe a little more, something like that. So it's variable. Tough to bank on like those last few being guaranteed, right? But even so, I think there's some like obvious ones that are going to be there. Roma will be there. Stars won't be there. Green Book will still be in Best Picture. Favorite will be there. That's 4, right? I don't think you can really say those won't happen. Vice, despite the, polarizing reception in a certain sense, it's going to get some love elsewhere, including Bale. I think Vice is still a lock, although it really has no chance to win. A lot of people thought it might have before, right? So that's Vice. I think Beale Street will still get in there. That's 6. Black Klansman, 7. Now 8. If it's just 8, for example, we'll stick with that. Is it Black Panther? Is it Bohemian Rhapsody? Is it something unexpected like First Man? Because if it's 10, all 3 of those could get in,
Yeah.
So I think Black Panther probably has a better shot than Bohemian Rhapsody if it's pick one right now, just because I think that Golden Globe immediate backlash will be fresh on people's minds when they voted this following week. But who am I to say?
No, I agree with what you're saying, and I really hope you're right. Man, it feels like it was a really good year for film. So many good directors and so many good performances. Almost like too many. Like I'm looking here at like the films that are left off, and like it would be really nice to see a film like Can You Ever Forgive Me sneak in there, um, or Eighth Grade, which I really loved. First Reformed, like we talked about, I think that could be deserving of getting in there too. There's so many that are going to be left out. Who would be your pick to win this? I feel like this is a little bit more. I feel like there's like three that could potentially really take this home. Maybe four with Klansman having an outside shot.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's Roma or Star is Born. I never really subscribed to Green Book or Bohemian Rhapsody actually getting it done. And I'm still gonna. I'm not fuck. I'm not convinced yet, but I'm still gonna lean with Roma. Actually, given the Star is Born has slightly faltered earlier, right?
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how many unconventional picks get in. I mean, in a certain sense, Black Klansman is one of those picks. But then when we're talking about Black Panther and Bohemian Rhapsody, you know, it's a wider scope than I think people anticipated at the start of the year. It's also funny because there's a lot of movies that are going to be very undernommed, if at all. I mean, from big directors, Steve McQueen had a movie this year. Jason Reitman had 2 movies. Clint Eastwood, the Coen brothers, Spielberg, Wes Anderson. A lot of directors, people at the Academy like that have been nominated before, don't really seem to have any chance at much of anything. So it's an interesting year.
Definitely an interesting year. My pick would be A Star is Born. I think they're going to fall short in a lot of the categories they get nominated for, but I think they'll actually take home the big prize at the end of the night. Either way, once the nominations come out, we'll have some analysis on our Twitter about it. So follow at Nowstalgia Pod on Twitter, and we'll also be tweeting along when the Oscars happen on, I believe it's the 22nd, if I'm correct. So please follow us there for all of our analysis around this. And if there's something really big, like if there's really something to talk about with it, yeah, we'll on the 24th we'll bring it up and we'll talk about it on the pod before then. But if not, come back here and see if we got it right. I think that's going to do it for us for this week. Dave, any last thoughts for the people?
Shit ton of music, as we mentioned at the top this week. That's really the primary focus for us. 3 big ones: Maggie Rogers, James Blake, Future. But then other things that are interesting: Sharon Van Etten, Rich the Kid, YNM Melly, Mike Posner. We'll try and get to as much as we can. I'll also chime in on Glass, M. Night Shyamalan film. It's the first big movie of the year. Hasn't reviewed too well, but I'm still going to check it out. The sequel to Unbreakable and Split, which was not a planned trilogy until the end of Split, as everyone found out. So I'm very interested to see what's going on with Glass. So I'll chime in on that. And in the meantime, keep watching True Detective.
Yeah, we're going to have a huge music pod for you next week. So make sure your Spotify subscription is valid and good to go, because we got a lot to work through. In the meantime, again, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to find any way to find the pod. Give us a rating and review on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter. All that good stuff. We appreciate you. Peace out.